Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, investor, and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you some of the insights from retail's leaders and legends, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. Want to drive more traffic and conversions on your e-commerce site? Brands that use video see 41% more traffic from search engines, and that's just the start. Meet Firework, the leader in AI-powered video commerce. Trusted by brands like L'Oreal and Unilever, Firework turns any page into an immersive, shoppable experience. From pre-recorded long-form content to short-form and everything in between. With Firework, you can easily integrate social media videos into your product pages and run pre-recorded digital showrooms with shoppable content. Plus, Firework offers AI-powered virtual assistants to personalize shopper experience and drive higher conversion. That's why I'm an investor and advisor. Learn more at firework.com. Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm Ken Pilot, and my guest today is Amanda Baldwin, the CEO of Olaplex, the category-creating, technology-empowered, and stylist-inspired global prestige hair care company. She joined the business in December 2023 to oversee its transformation, setting its strategy for growth and innovation, brand storytelling, and executional excellence. Amanda is a veteran of the beauty industry. Prior to joining Olaplex, she served as the CEO of leading SPF skincare brand Supergoop for over 7 years and has held top marketing positions at Dior Beauty, at LVMH, and Clinique, a part of the Estée Lauder companies. She began her career in finance and as a consumer investor at L. Catterton, Apax Partners, and Goldman Sachs. Amanda earned an AB magna cum laude from Harvard College and an MBA with honors from Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, where she was a Palmer Scholar. She serves on the board of Imbata and KIP NYC and is a winner of the EY Entrepreneur of the Year. Amanda, welcome to the Retail Pilot.
At long last. Glad to be here.
I mean, we almost had you on when you were the CEO of Supergoop, but
yes.
I guess the world told us that things were going to change for you. And now we have you on as CEO of Olaplex. So even more exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Glad it worked out.
So reading your amazing bio, one has to ask, what inspired you to pivot from Wall Street to the beauty industry?
Well, it's less of a pivot and maybe sort of a returning to the thing that I was always passionate about. So I grew up in New York City. I've always had, I think, a world filter for brand and storytelling that I didn't really know that it existed or what to call it. But when I was, I don't know how old, quite young, probably still single digits, I remember Benetton going out of business on 86th and Madison and the Gap going in and having this moment of, well, I wonder why that is. What's changing? And I actually ended up writing my college thesis on the Gap and the rise of that company, and so excited to watch what's happening there now. And it was just sort of always in my blood somewhere was this passion for understanding the consumer and design and creativity. And even though I started on Wall Street and that my time at Goldman, my time at Apax were so pivotal to who I am, and I still run decisions through a spreadsheet in my head when I'm thinking about marketing, I think there must have been some little piece of me that always knew there was going to be something else in my story. And that probably came to fruition when I was at Apax and we were investing in Calvin Klein. Phil Finhuysen was buying Calvin Klein, and we put up the money for PVH to do that. And I had a job title and a job description that had me spending a lot of time with the incredible CFO who then became the CEO, Manny Chirico. I sat in his office a lot, built the model. But my sort of spirit came alive when I walked down the hallway and was in with the merchants and the product. And I realized at that moment that maybe I was on the wrong side of the table. I think the bigger aha for me was that I loved the operating side of the business, that analyzing it was really important, but being a part of building it was the thing I really wanted to do. So when I went back to Wharton, and I think that's how you and I met, was through the Baker retailing program. That program was a tiny corner of the website. And I went to Wharton because I thought it was the way I was going to pivot into actually having an operating job. So I think it was in there from the beginning. And it took me a little while to figure out how to make it part of my life.
That being said, what were some of the bigger challenges that you had transitioning from a finance role to leading creative teams in the beauty sector?
Well, first was getting the job. I have to say the world has happily changed, that an MBA is not such a rarity in this industry, but it really was at the time. And I had a lot of people who just couldn't imagine why I even wanted to do it. They felt like I was swimming in the wrong direction. Why do you want to go to retail? You're already in private equity. You can work on Wall Street. Like, what are you coming here for? And convincing people that I did understand aesthetics and creative aspects of the job took some time and took a lot of conversations and dialogue with a few people who took a chance on me. And so there, at the end of the day, it came down to fellow Wharton grad who took a chance on me and was willing to say, I think her skills are transferable, and saw that little spark in me that was oriented towards that original moments on the street of Madison Avenue. And so, like anything else in life, it's connections, it's personal community that ends up really opening up doors. And that's how it happened.
And then you spent some time with both LVMH and Estée Lauder. I mean, high-end beauty. Talk to us a little bit about that experience, the learnings, and what you were able to take with you and package into the balance of your career.
Honestly, I've had the best training that anyone could ask for. And that, again, starting on Wall Street, working at Goldman, working at Apex, I learned all this incredible financial underpinnings to everything I was doing. I understood the markets, I understood how to think like an investor. And Estée Lauder and LVMH were the places that I learned what great brands are and how they operate, both from the nuts and bolts of the infrastructure. I sat on the global marketing team at Estée Lauder. I understood how something went from an idea on a PowerPoint slide to selling on a shelf and, wherever it was around the world, and all the interconnectedness of all the teams and everything. It was just kind of a bird's eye view into, quite frankly, a lot of things that I've learned to build in the second half of everything that I've done since business school. LVMH, it's the best possible training for storytelling, branding, a lot of the things that I learned there. And I was lucky enough to actually literally go to school to understand brand DNA and codes and things that I've certainly applied at Supergoop and bringing that brand story to life. And as we have rebirthed and really told the story of Olaplex over the course of the last month or two now, so much of that process was rooted in the things that I learned at LVMH. And it was the companies, but it was also the people. I worked for some of the greats in our industry who I was lucky enough to have them take me under their wing and kind of give me a little bit of extra insight into what they were working on. I was always the first person to volunteer for the extra little plus up assignment or whatever it was that was going to get me into the room and into the sort of opportunity to sit and learn from these folks. So I've been very, very lucky along the way.
Well, I don't know if you were lucky or just good, or maybe it's the combination.
It's always a little bit of both.
It is a little bit of both. But somebody once said, you got to be good before you can be lucky. And I like to think that anyway.
Okay.
So now you have this strong Wharton background, this financial resume. You've learned the best of branding from some of the greatest in beauty. You take that to Supergoop, going from public companies to now privately held. In fact, it was also founder-led when you joined. Tell us about that transition and what were the challenges you faced going to a smaller brand?
So one of the things that was the driver of my decision, I actually went to a PE firm between LVMH and Supergoop. Catterton then became L. Catterton, was that I saw that the world was changing, that the rise of, we'll call it digital writ large, social media, the boundaries of creating a brand were just coming down completely. And it was going to be this whole new era. And I really wanted to be a part of that. And I think now that I look back on everything, which, hindsight's always, paints a perfect picture, I had very entrepreneurial instincts, even when I was in these bigger places. So when I was at Goldman, I actually helped the vice chairman start a nonprofit out of Goldman. When I was at Estee Lauder, I started a brand new part of the Clinique business from scratch. When I was at Dior, I was opening up the website, opening up the Facebook page. I've always loved being the person that's kind of pushing to the place that something has never gone before. So clearly those entrepreneurial roots were in there somewhere. Again, it's funny, like now I can put a label on it. But at the time, I think I just wanted to be a part of this big new world that was going to happen. And I thought it would be really exciting. And so that led me to go to Catterton because that was a pivot out of the big corporate world. And again, I would not be where I am without that training, without that structure, without those foundations. But I wanted to start to go build. So that was what started to happen at Catterton. And then in 2016, I got a phone call that Supergoop and the founder of Supergoop was looking for a partner. And Holly Thaggart, had this unbelievable vision about changing the way the world thinks about sunscreen. And she needed somebody to make that real, is the best way to sort of tell that story. And 7.5 years of kind of incredible work together, we really did change the way the world thinks about sunscreen. And if you rewind to the beginning of that story, it was, under 10 people, a few $1 million in sales, one shelf in 100 Sephora's. That was it. Kind of a website. It was built on WordPress. I think we had 10,000 Instagram followers, but there was a really big idea and there was something so powerful in that. And I think that's what I love, is to sort of see where the big ideas, the big purpose, and, we certainly could talk more about what that was at Supergoop. And then to have a little bit of a blank sheet of paper about how you're going to make that real. So I love that journey from the dream to reality. And that's really the thing that I think I've figured out is my sweet spot in life.
What were some of the key strategies, the key unlocks you put in place while you're at Supergoop?
So I think these things, and I would say there's a lot of parallels to Olaplex as well. First and foremost, I believe in great product. I believe in innovation. I'm someone who really is driven by creating the highest quality product that the world has not seen before, right? I'm an innovator. And that was in the DNA of Supergoop. It's certainly in the DNA of Olaplex to push boundaries and to think differently and to do it with incredible technical backing, right? And at Supergoop, that was an ability to formulate sunscreens in a way nobody else knew how to do. And I remember meeting with Holly and her head of R&D and my first or second day on the job. I'm like, how are you guys actually doing this? And it was just unbelievable ability to see what other people couldn't see and just kind of go and make it happen. And obviously underpinned in a real, again, technical understanding of how sunscreen works. It's a very complicated chemistry to it. And my job was to take that amazing ability and start to commercialize it. And it was probably a few days into the job, maybe a week or two into the job, when we made this list of all the things that people didn't like about sunscreen. It's sticky, it's tacky, it doesn't wear well under my makeup, leaves this white cast. And we're like, well, we're going to just go solve these. And I think in a lot of organizations, you see that and you're daunted by it. I love being in organizations where you see that list, you're like, I'm going to go figure that out. And there came Unseen Sunscreen, which truly is a product that changed the beauty industry, changed the way people wear sunscreen. So first and foremost, it's about product. And I'll always go back to that because I think everything else is really important. But if you don't have a great product, that's why I sleep at night. Second thing is marketing, storytelling, brand storytelling. And interestingly, at Supergoop, as well as at Olaplex, there was a very early marketing team, I would say, sort of skeletal operation when I joined in both places that needed to be really built in the right way. So hiring incredible talent, making sure that they have a clear roadmap about what is the brand, what's the story that we want to tell, really kind of cracking the insights about what's going to, in the case of Supergoop, it was 90% of the signs of aging come from the sun. It's the number one thing you can do for your skin. And yet people aren't wearing sunscreen every day. Like, how do you solve for that? And again, so much of it came from the very beginning of Holly's story of make it fun, right? The name, it was joyful. And instead of scolding everybody about you must wear sunscreen, we made it fun. And that's easier said than done, right? It comes from the spirit of the brand and how you create product and how you get out there and market. But that ability was always amazing. I had to sort of harness it and get the product out. But then you had to layer on a brand because otherwise you're putting something on a shelf or on a website. Nobody knows it's there. And so marketing and storytelling and distinctiveness and brand love, and that's how you really get that engine going. So those are the things that I think is never one or the other. You have to have both at the same time.
It's interesting, when you say the product, marketing, the storytelling, and I think back to you doing your college paper on the Gap and having spent time at the Gap. If you go back to when Gap was great, and maybe now it's going to be great again, make Gap great again. No, I don't want to go there. It was all about the product. And it was about the storytelling. And I don't think any brand can really win without putting product first. No matter how good your operation is, no matter how good your storytelling is, if you don't have product, that you've created an emotional connection with the customer, you can't win. So I love the way you're approaching it, that you have approached it. It's the right formula.
That's good to hear. That's definitely good to hear. And yeah, I think I've always believed product is your best loyalty program. As much as we talk about CRM and loyalty, the best thing you can do is create a product that people, especially in the beauty industry, which is about, I have a use up rate, the tube does get empty and I need to go refill it. Well, if I have a great product, that's how you create loyalty. But I will say that product without brand, it loses that emotional connection. And I think that emotional connection is the thing that really stands the test of time. And I've always, again, this is the LVMH training in me, thought about things in 100-year increments. Like, how do I build something that is still going to be powerful and meaningful in 100 years? And you need brand to do that. And I think the great businesses that can kind of weather the ups and the downs of life, right, are the ones that have a great brand behind them. And so, again, it's never either or. But if you ask me, I'm now my second time of doing this, I'd much rather be handed an amazing product and R&D ability and have to build the marketing and the brand than the other way around. So that's a lot more challenging a problem to solve because I think that it's just much deeper into the infrastructure when you talk about product capability. And really, I go beyond product. I go to like real R&D and innovation capability. It gets me the most excited.
You became CEO at Olaplex in December of 23. Tell us about the company and its position in the market. Just allow for those listening to understand the size of the business, even today, but where it was in the market, and then just elaborate around your near-term focus, what you set out to do when you took on this job.
So I think Olaplex is one of the most unique and inspiring stories that exist in beauty. It really is a product that changed hair care. And quite frankly, I'd even say it changed beauty because it brought to market truly patented technology that really made a difference. This is stuff that we have technology that we're the only ones that are able to do it. And I was actually spent the day yesterday at ABS, which is a beauty show, a hair show in Chicago. And I was watching our team demonstrate on live models what our technology can and can't do and on hair swatches. And it's unbelievable. Like, it really is what this product does. So that alone catapulted Olaplex to global fame because the product was so different. The original product 1 and 2, something that's used in salons, and salons around the world is actually, the way that it works is it's actually mixed in with your color surfaces. So the big unlock that Olaplex allowed was that if I'm a colorist, this allows me to paint in my most wild dreams, right? And I really say paint because colorists are artists. All hairstylists are really creative artists. And the ones who are colorists, they're like painters on hair. And there's a lot of restrictions to what you can and can't do. And this is like some serious heavy chemistry that I have no business explaining that they would be better able to do it. But Olaplex effectively allowed the hair to be stronger so that it could handle more of their creativity. So, think of it as, we really say it's a healthy foundation for endless possibilities. That alone changed everything that went on in a salon. And so this brand exploded around the world because everybody just wanted to have it as a part of their business. And then it had a consumer line and it just shot to the moon. But the business also did grow too quickly. And now it's my job to kind of go back and make sure that we harness that capability, that we keep on innovating, that we continue to build the brand. Back to what we were saying before, there wasn't really a brand ecosystem that existed within this in the way that I know about it and the way that I've been taught. Build the right infrastructure. We didn't talk about infrastructure and team, which is an equally important part to the product and brand aspects of these things. So I've been on a mission to really build a business, to build a brand that lives up to the incredible nature of the product that we sell.
You talk a lot on your most recent earnings call about R&D and innovation. Mm-hmm. Why don't you elaborate on that a bit more and talk more specifically about some of the innovation that you're bringing to market that you're most excited about?
So we've had a couple of really exciting launches since I joined. One of the ones that I think is really, I would say, representative of kind of how we're thinking as a business is that we launched something called Bond Shaping Rebuilding Treatment last fall. And I bring this one up because it's a brand new technology. It's different than our original technology. It's something that's very, very specifically designed for curly and coily hair. So that's number one, right? We're sort of continuing to innovate. Second, it was a salon service. So one of the things that's also been a very important part of my mission is connecting with that R&D ability, but also reconnecting with the pro. And then, again, there's a reason that I spent the day at a hair show yesterday to really understand and make sure that we continue to deliver for the original consumers of Olaplex is the pro and the stylist. So bringing another service to the salons was something that was really exciting for us to do. And third is making sure that we're addressing all types of hair, right? And hair is this, I never knew how unbelievable the category was. I had been in beauty now for 20 years. I've touched everything but hair. And it's a wild, magical world in and of itself that is so personal. And every single person has their story about their hair. And people with curly and coily hair have a even deeper story, I find oftentimes, because the world hasn't set up to make sure that we are giving the products that can actually deliver the healthiest hair for those types of hair. So I really think it was a great example on all three fronts of really where we want our product development to go.
This may be a marketing question, but it's a crowded space and there's a fair amount of competition around the brand. How do you get Olaplex to stand out? How do you rise above the noise and reach that customer to let her know what you have is best for her?
Beauty is a competitive industry. I often think like different industries operate in different ways. I think beauty has a lot of innovation to it, a lot of creativity. It's always growing. I think it has amazing resilience. But it's also very competitive. And that's just a dynamic that exists within. I think in today's world, again, it comes back to what we were talking about before. You've got to innovate, right? We love 1 and 2, but we have to continue to address what's the next thing and make sure that we're keeping, our core the best it can be, but also innovating. So you cannot rest on your laurels and you have to build a brand. And I think in order to compete effectively in today's world, you really need to have a very strong marketing engine. And I believe in order to have a strong marketing engine, you have to have a really clear sense of self. So the thing that I wanted us to be able to do was to start to put a thumb over the Olaplex logo and have a recognizable look, feel, emotional tenure of the brand. And we're in, again, 2 months into starting to build this, not even 6 weeks, probably, if I went back to count. And I think in order to really be successful, you need to be top of mind, but top of mind with and connect, right? So it's not just about awareness, but you really need a certain level of cultural relevance and connection to the consumer. And that can be different things, obviously, for different people, depending upon who you're targeting and what you're going after. But I think we're really trying to build something that lives beyond a specific demographic or age group, or you hear a lot about brands for this generation. I want to build a brand that's for every generation. So again, that's a whole other topic, but I think that's what we've got to do.
When you say for every generation, that I think, again, going back to the Gap playbook, right? It wasn't for every generation, there's a Gap, but that's okay. No one even remembers that. Maybe just me.
I remember it because I read every single ad that company had ever produced. But when you think about the great, great brands that will stand the test of time, they are not millennial brands or Gen Z brands or Gen Alpha brands. They are brands. And I think, again, this is the LVMH in me speaking. When I think about the brands that I most admire, they are the icons that have stood the test of time, right? When you talk about Coke or Nike or Starbucks or these things, Apple, these are brands that they don't necessarily think about one generation, right? They're thinking about connecting and something that's more than a demographic. And that's what really inspires me at the end of the day.
You mentioned cultural relevance. You've been working with more collaborators. Maybe you can expand upon how you're using collaborations to create reach and bring in a new customer to Olaplex.
I think the other thing that's really changed over the course of 20 years that I've been at this is it went from the brand speaks to the consumer to we all talk together. And I think that it's a multi-dimensional dialogue, right? You have the own things that you're saying as a brand. Those are important, especially in a space like us where we have technical product and we better explain it very effectively. You have what others can say for you. And in our case, we have these incredible stylists that are out there and other influencers. And I call it, sort of a third party voice, right? I wish there were a better word for that because I think of it much more like building a family and a community. And then you have your consumer and there's lots of overlap within these things. I don't know that it's so specifically siloed. So one of the things that actually made Olaplex so successful in the beginning was that community of voices was so enthralled with this product and this brand that it spoke on its behalf. Quite frankly, why it didn't need marketing was because everybody else was doing all of this sort of magic. I mean, again, can you imagine how unique that means that this product and this brand is when you think about how rare that is? But you have to build on that, right? Like that will carry you to a certain place. And then, again, it does get more competitive. You do something successful, other people are going to show up. So if you want to keep building that over time, you need to sort of what I'll call systematize how you generate that conversation. And so we've done a lot of work to find very, very authentic relationships. So we just launched our first true brand campaign called Design to Defy, and it showcases 3 incredible women and their stylists. And this was not made up, right? We did not say we're going to go cast and we went and we said, where are the true relationships? And so Jenna Lyons and Jenna Perry. Jenna Perry has been doing Jenna Lyons' hair forever. When you photograph them and you show them in a salon talking about what they want to do with her hair, it's real. It's not made up, right? And we had a couple of other pairs also but that's just a good example of like coming to this idea of collaborating, but from a place of authenticity. And that's really what I think brands need. And I think that's something that we want to create. And I think that to me is very also inspired by the community that the pro has is so real and so authentic. And they all know each other and they help each other and they're exchanging ideas and the energy is infectious when you're around them. That's what the energy it needs to be that comes from this brand.
You touched on something important. I mean, Olaplex, I think this year will be a $500 million plus business. I think I'm in the right range.
You're in the right range. We haven't given specific guidance for this area.
Share with us a little bit more the breakdown of the pro, D2C, and maybe international business that you do, just so we have some context of how the business is being done today.
So the things that we talk about publicly are that, you can think of our business as basically half in the US, half international, domestic versus international. So really strong international presence. And I think that's, again, a real testament to the power of this brand and this product. We'll be 11 years old in June. To have that kind of global reach so young, I think is, something that was very exciting to me when I joined. And then if you think about really where the flywheel of distribution for us starts in the salon, a lot of that's done through distributor relationships. Then we go to retail and we have, some of the best partnerships that you could dream of in the world. In our ecosystem, you have Sephora and Ulta, for example. And then we have our direct to consumer business. And it varies depending upon country, how those are split up.
One of the things you said in your last earnings call, and I'll paraphrase, drive brand demand through marketing and visuals, innovate with groundbreaking hair health products, and execute strategies with operational excellence. I think those are 3 big areas to go after. You've talked a bit about product. You've talked a bit about marketing and storytelling. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about the team that you've built. I know you've made some incredible hires since you've started, and certainly that would be the underpinning to operational excellence.
You're right. And I'm so glad you asked, because all of this is just PowerPoint slides unless you have an incredible team, right? And you can have all the dreams in the world, but if you don't have a great team, they just stay dreams. And so that was an important part of job number 1 for me, was to make sure that I found the best possible team. And we had some incredible people here, right? Our chief scientist, our chief innovation officer, head of HR, legal. Those are great people who were here in the team when I joined. We did hire a new COO, CFO, new CMO, new CRO, to really drive the business to what we needed to be going forward, right? You notice there's sort of great product ability that existed within the company, and marketing and sales and really kind of thinking about how to do that were relatively new. And so, we now have a full bench, which I'm very excited about, of just AAA talent. And we really are, starting to hit our stride as we get to, really be a team together. And you're right that it's also about how do we surround ourselves with the right systems and processes that enable the creativity that's so important to this business. And that's something that was also a very important part of work that had to happen, was building the infrastructure and the conversations and the processes that, again, this business grew very, very quickly. And so now we get to go back and make sure that how you run something every day really matters, right? Again, and when you talk about execution, it's an idea, it's people, but then what's the wiring between them? And that's something that we really needed as a business. And we've spent just as much time making sure that we are doing things in the right order, having the right conversations, having an integrated business planning processes, things that, again, if you rewind back to the early days of my career, when I say I learned how to run a global company from being in that center at Estée Lauder, we're building out that infrastructure, which is a really important part. And we're really shifting as an organization from last year. There was a lot happening behind the scenes, right? Everything that you see now, that took a year. That's pretty fast, but it took a year to get it up and running. Now we have to execute like it because now we're in the zone where we're testing, learning, iterating, and just putting one foot in front of the other. And that is a different phase for the business, but it's a really exciting phase because we start to get feedback of how we're doing and reactions from the consumer and from the pro. And then, we'll continue to test and learn from there.
Well, sounds like you have the right team in place. The product is in the right place. We're entering a challenging place in the world right now. We're less than a week out from what Trump calls Liberation Day and these new tariffs. I think the good news for Olaplex is your product's made in the United States. So pricing pressure on product here will probably be less. We'll find out later what happens abroad as the world is changing by the minute and literally by the minute. But it sounds like you're in a good place for now. Share with us a little bit more about the challenge going from a privately held company to a publicly held company. What's the headline, 1 or 2, 3 challenges around that?
So I think the reality is that I think the way that I think about life is build a great business, period. And I thought about that day one when I joined Supergoop, and it was very early on. And then again, there's going to be an exit. You take on outside capital, and I always understood what that meant, but I had never made decisions just for that purpose. And I think it's the same thing in a role like this. And I did take on a tremendous brand with a big transformation ahead of it. And I've been very open with everybody that is not linear and it will take time, but we're really laser focused on what is, we have the beauty of being able to make the right long-term decisions for this business. And so you're right. Right now, there's a lot going on in the world and every minute we learn something new, but I remain and I want to keep the teams really focused on what are we building? And that does not mean that you're not iterating and understanding all the things that are happening around you and making sure that we're doing right by our investors. But we've got to be focused on what we're building, especially for where we are as a business right now. So I think it's about awareness and then focus at the same time. And so that's really, I think, the balance in a public company is, absolutely, yes, I have obligations that I take very seriously to our investors. I have quarterly earnings calls and I'm going to do that in the right way. But I'm also going to build the best possible business that we can and let that work do what it needs to do.
Shift gears for a minute. What advice would you give to a younger you looking for a first job?
Do exactly what I did. And I think that I feel very lucky to have had all the background and the experiences that I've had. I think that if I were trying to contextualize that to something broader, I think that it's almost the same thing I just said about the business is I believe in the clarity of knowing what you want in the long run, but the flexibility of how you're going to get there in the short run and somehow trying to figure out how to navigate that. So I think the younger me always knew I had this curiosity about consumer businesses. I think somewhere along the line, pretty early, I wrote my business school essay for Wharton. This is 4 years out of college about how I wanted to be a CEO one day. So I've always had that North Star. But if you ask me, did I know exactly how this story would unfold? And can I even remotely predict what will happen over the next 10 or 20 years? Definitely not. And I think that's the joy of it. And I think somehow feeling comfortable in both of those places to me is what I try. That's the advice that I'd give anyone on their own career journey.
Were there mentors you had along the way? And if so, how did you work with them? How did you use their knowledge to help you with what you needed to accomplish?
So many. You don't do anything in life on your own. And I think especially as one ends up and sort of quote unquote rises through the ranks and you end up in a CEO seat, you're even more reliant on people that are mentors, that are kind of people that exist outside of your organization that can be sounding boards, whether it's fellow CEOs or other people that I've worked with or for over time. I happen to have an incredible chairman in this role, and that is an amazing relationship. And so I'm not someone who's afraid to ask for help. And I'm always seeking out other people's opinions about things because I think there's always something to be learned. That's probably the best thing. And I think that all these relationships have grown very organically, with the exception of when I was at Goldman, I was assigned a mentor who's still a dear friend and a great thought partner to me. But after that, it's been up to me to figure it out.
I like that, not being afraid to ask for help. I think that's an important ingredient to anyone regarding what position they may aspire to, how they pursue their career. But asking for help, letting people know that you may not know something and just asking for a better explanation, I think are key. We're going to pivot to rapid fire. This is the
Okay.
final part of today's podcast. Are you ready?
I hope so.
When not working, what occupies your time?
My son,
Who would you most like to meet?
Estée Lauder.
Favorite streamed show?
Oh, this one is harder for me. I like a lot of them. Bridgerton or anything by Mindy Kaling. How about that?
Top location for vacation?
Somewhere I haven't been before.
Your favorite interview question to ask a candidate?
So if someone asked me this once, I don't ask it all the time, but they asked me if I were a brand, what would I be? And that was one heck of a question. I think it tells you a lot, especially marketing interviews.
If you were a brand, what would you be?
I remember the answer to this question, and this is probably circa coming out of business school when they were testing, did I have any creative instincts? And I remember saying theory. And I said it was because it was reliable and could get along with anything.
And with that, we'll land this flight of the retail pilot. Amanda Baldwin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's flight of the retail pilot. And please give us a review on your favorite podcast platform.